Welcome back to another episode of the Conjugate Dads podcast. I am your co-host, Dave Chase, with my other co-host, Justin Commandoris. How are we today, Justin, on this Thursday afternoon?
Good, man. I'm chilly this time of year, so I don't know I mean. It's nice outside at least, and it's not super cold outside, but it seems like it just takes so long for it to warm up that
You had the snow, right? Earlier this
we did.
this week? Yeah.
It was like a 3-hour dusting. It accumulated, but it wasn't like anything crazy, and then the next day it was melted.
77 right now where I am, a high of 81. It's going to be in the 80s until next Thursday. 74 is the high. Tough stuff.
Oh,
35 though. It's that 40 degree. I mean, you remember being in Texas, that 40-degree swing, Central Texas weather that we never seem to be prepared for.
yeah, everyone's sinuses love that, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah. We just got the ear tubes done for Theo yesterday, and so he was all messed up. But hopefully his sinuses will feel a lot better.
I need to have my ear tubes done.
That's what I was thinking. I said, yeah, I should get these done. Yeah, but when Emily told me how much it would cost, I said, never mind. I'd rather be deaf. There's nothing wrong with being deaf. I just want to make that clear. But I know that my ear ducts are not draining like they should. So
Yeah.
I'm going to stop talking about ear ducts and go to today's topic, which, Justin, I know you're going to give the opening thoughts, but I'll just tell our listeners and viewers that we had discussed, as we do every single week, what do you want to talk about? What stuck out? What did you see online recently as someone who spends a lot of time online creating content, looking at content? And I know that we had brought up high volume training versus low volume training. So I'll let you give your opening thoughts on that topic.
Before we go there, because I feel like we've been talking a little bit more about like football related stuff lately.
Sure.
With the Patriots doing good. So like naturally, we're going to talk about that more with Dave's team doing really good and restoring order to the AFC, so
Absolutely.
to speak. And one thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is not politically motivated at all, but you know what really chaps my ass is that Amon Ra St. Brown had to apologize for doing that little dance that he did.
The Trump dance. Yeah.
Like, dude, they got guys doing the 2-pump chump dance, but
well,
he does
that's the Key and Peele dance. Yeah, but the reason why he got the flag. Yeah, go ahead.
He does this, and it's like, I'm sorry if I offended anybody. Like, why are we, regardless of what you feel and think, like, why are we getting offended for, I think I read it on ESPN, by the way, but why are we getting offended by someone doing a dance like that? It's just like, where have we gone in 2025?
Well, yeah, I mean, so the Key and Peele skit, if no one's familiar with that, Rico Dowdle did that. He actually flipped the ball on the ground first, so it was spinning around clockwise or counterclockwise. I think it was clockwise. And so that's actually counting as a celebration. And then he did the 2-pump, which that's 3. You can only have 2. So that's the whole joke.
I thought that I saw that they told him that he couldn't do 3 pumps. If he did 2, he wouldn't get fined. If he did 3.
The whole joke is like, even Keegan Michael Key said, like, there actually is no rule about pumps. Like that was all made up, obviously. Like that's like the whole joke. So they actually, and Keegan Michael Key and his wife actually donated like $15,000 in the charity of Dowdle's choice, which I would like to know, where does that charity money or fine money go? Like when you get fined by
That's
the NFL,
a really good question, because they hand down millions of fines every year.
Sure. Yeah. And this is something that, I mean, I like Pat McAfee. He said this, where if you have $100 million contract, but let's say like 50 million is in signing bonus, and then your salary is only like, let's just say $10 million, right? For 5 years. Your game check is $10 million, your yearly salary divided by 17, of course, right? But if you're only making like $1 million on a salary, you're only getting fined $1 million divided by 17.
Yeah.
A minus 1 check of that. So that's really not, bad. Versus like if you're getting paid $60 million, like some of these quarterbacks, yeah, it's going to be quite a bit. So anyway, I would be curious to know where this NFL fine money is going. And then yes, restoring order to the
And I'm
AFC.
sure you could find out, but I
Yeah.
would, if I had to guess, I would guess salaries for NFL people,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then I would say charities would be my two guesses.
AI overview on Google says NFL fine money is donated to charitable programs for former players in youth football, not kept by the league. I think that's a lie. Specifically, the funds are directed to organizations like the NFL Foundation and the Professional Athletes Foundation to support players' health, safety, and wellness, as well as youth programs. I will say I have heard a few references to these football camps where it is kind of like a laundering scheme, allegedly, where they will host these camps and that's how they actually get rich, where it's not, you're just going there to, of course, see
Yes,
like, yeah,
it's
you're going
not,
there to see
but
high profile
I think
player help you be better. Yeah.
I think it's a legal scheme though, David. I think they use that to
No, absolutely.
massively write off tax money
No, yeah,
on
which
those
I think is
things.
completely fine. That's fine if it's
Right.
within the legal rights. I don't have to like it, but it's not illegal to my understanding. As far as the Amon Ra St. Brown touchdown celebration, I love him as a receiver. I think the same people beating the drum with keep politics out of sports were these same people who were mad that Amon Ra was doing that celebration. Were they mad when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling? Because if they weren't, seems like they're talking a little bit out of both sides of their mouth, right?
Don't wouldn't you say though one's like done in like jest versus like one's very, very politically motivated? Like the kneeling obviously was,
Yeah,
there
it
was a
was a
lot of
message. He was trying to draw attention,
right
absolutely, and I
versus
have no
just,
problem with that, by the way.
you know, he didn't do, it's not like Trump wasn't there. Trump was at the game, right?
Imagine
So
Miles doing the salute. Well, maybe he is making a statement here. I don't care. You and I have had this conversation off the air. I couldn't care less what political party an athlete belongs to. And I think you are an utter moron if you base your politics on someone you like. We've had this conversation about Taylor
right.
Swift. We've had this conversation about Tom Brady because I had that sports media class years ago. This is close to 9, 10 years ago now, when he had the red hat in the locker room. And all these people, I grew up in Massachusetts. Everyone who does listen to this podcast regularly knows that. Wearing the Patriots hat. And it's a very democratic state. And the issue with that people had was that he had the red hat in there. He had been friends with the president, the now president, two-time president, for multiple years. You played golf with him. You don't have to like everything your friends think and say. Now, that being said, whomever put the hat in there should have known there was going to be some backlash. So, same thing. I think that Amon Ra St. Brown knew that there was going to be a little bit, and he probably just didn't give a shit. And you know what? So what? So what? He didn't do it. It was nothing. I just pulled up a clip from 2017. If you don't remember this, Odell Beckham Jr. scores a touchdown. I'm watching it right now. This is 9/24 of 17. So Donald Trump was in office, and there was something about, sticking to sports. And Odell, I think it was Laura Ingraham that had said like the shut up and dribble comment. He scored, he lifts his leg up on all fours like he's doing a fire hydrant and peeing like a dog.
I
Now
remember.
that was a lot of backlash. Dude, he's doing a celebration. I think he gets flagged on the play. I don't care if
Didn't
someone
Ole
does
Miss
that.
do that against Mississippi State too one
I think,
year? And it
yeah,
started like a huge fight or something like that.
yeah.
But, yeah,
Like,
like,
what's the issue? Yeah.
I just, yeah, and if you know about, I'm sure you know about Amon Ra St. Brown's dad, and like
His dad. I like his dad. I don't get some of the shit he said is a little bad.
it's
But yeah.
just the way that he talks about like how he trains is, I'm talking from like a training aspect. His dad from a training aspect's just like the way that he has trained them, and he thinks that it's because of his training that the way they are, instead of the fact that they're just like genetic specimen freaks, you
Right.
know?
And anyone who doesn't know who Justin's talking about, his name is John Brown, not the famous abolitionist. John Brown is the father of Detroit Lions wide receiver Amon Ra St. Brown. And then there's actually two other brothers. I'm going to screw up this name. Aquin,
Aquanimus.
thank you. And Osiris St. Brown, who played college football at Stanford. And I know, so John Brown was a professional bodybuilder, won Mr. Universe twice in the 1980s. disciplined, rigorous training methods. He added the Saint to make it more unique. Okay, go ahead. So yeah, so he's a famous bodybuilder, Mr. Universe winner twice over. But you were talking about his issues, your issues with his training style.
Yeah, he goes on all these podcasts and talks about like how he trains his sons in the off season with using just specific bodybuilding tactics. And I mean, and how he doesn't believe that, they need to do any explosive movements
Like
or
no
any type of
ballistic movements.
specificity stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
And
agree with that. I mean, you're playing wide receiver. You gotta, right?
yeah,
Like you
yeah,
gotta
yeah.
push
I
someone at the
mean,
line.
dude,
Yeah. Yeah.
but again, his thing is like in the same statements he makes comments about how he knows his seed is gold. So that's why he had a lot of kids, is because he knew
Yeah.
genetically
I knew he had
that
said that. Yeah.
he was going to produce freaks, but in the same sentence it's like, well, they do this training because this is what I believe is the best way to train for athletes. And it's like, I think you're kind of overstating, you know, the the process of the way things work. But anyways, so I
Yeah.
I found that whole when I saw that St. Brown had made that apology, like, number one, he probably just didn't care, and someone told him he had to apologize because it went
Yeah.
viral or whatever. But like, dude, you're in Detroit. He's got to not care, because I don't think that that's a super Republican state.
No,
So
Michigan is very liberal to my understanding, which again, like
yeah,
this isn't a political podcast, but I would say it's very easy to go online and look at the records of what candidate has won in the state's history on midterms or president or what have you. So yes, I just looked. This is the apology that Justin was talking about. Quote, first of all, if I offended anyone, I do apologize. I did not mean to offend anyone. It was just we're having fun, unquote. St. Brown said on the St. Brown podcast that he co-hosts with his brother. Again, I don't want to say his name because I don't like him. If any president was at the game and had a dance, I would have done it. It had nothing to do with who the president was. Close quote. I don't really think it was that of an issue. I will say, wholeheartedly, like this already, like I'm not a big fan of him, the president, but I will say, I mean, first sitting president, it says it right here, since Jimmy Carter. I knew it had been a long time since for a sitting president to attend a regular season NFL
yeah, I
game.
saw that.
So I mean, we're going 50 years, nearly 50 years back. I know Trump went to the Super Bowl too this past February. So I think it's a pretty big deal to have a president in the building, whether you agree or disagree. We're not always going to get along about everything. You know that you and I disagree on certain things. We have coaches that we disagree with on their methodologies, and we talk back and forth. And same thing with football, right? Like there's more than one way to win a game. There's one way to train an athlete. And that brings us to today's podcast. I did my Patriots note, by the way. Yeah, so we're first in the AFC East. Definitely great. Number 3 seed because we lost to the Raiders week 1, who are absolute dog shit. And very upset about the Raiders and Steelers losses. But we got the Jets tonight, and I'm hoping that we kick the absolute shit out of them. And really, really excited to watch more Patriots dominance. 23-year-old Drake May ready to take the team to a Super Bowl, perhaps this year, maybe next year. Just riding high.
Yeah, I just don't see them not having the 1 seed with just 2 losses if they win out. Like, there's no way. Even if
Yeah, well, they have the Ravens. They got the Bengals. I didn't mean to cut you off. They got the Ravens, the Bengals, and there's another team that they might lose to on here. I'm not really sure. I thought the Giants game was actually going to be hard, but then I realized, they don't have a ton of weapons with Neighbors being out and then Scattaboo. They have the Jets, the Bengals next Sunday, and then they have a bye week, I say. No, they have the Giants, then a bye week. Bills at home, Ravens on the road, Jets in New Jersey, and then the Dolphins at home to end the season. They could definitely lose at least 1 or 2 more games. I mean, they could lose all of them, but I don't see
yeah,
them losing more than 3 games. So we'll see. Yeah, the one bye team per conference is definitely shaking it up versus the 2 buys. And I know that the Patriots, every time they went to the Super Bowl, had a bye week. So in the
yeah,
Belichick era. Yeah. Today's topic, high volume training versus low volume training. A lot of buzz online, as we mentioned before, with different opinions. There are certainly a lot of people out there who have an opinion on one or another. And I had noticed a couple other podcasts head down this topic. That's not why we're doing it. It's definitely a high interest right now. Any opening thoughts, Justin, on the high volume training versus low volume?
Number one, it's just comical that all these conversations are always ended up being driven by social media. And, a lot of times, a lot of this stuff even gets brought up in the first place, not because that person truly believes that that concept is the best concept, but because they have to be, posting troll bait in order to get like engagement, which is something that I personally just really refuse to do. I've never really tried it. Even though there are some things that I do take a stand on, I just think that there's so much context necessary and so many different situations that are more realistic for, real world application when it comes to certain issues like that. And so now what you're seeing is this rise in RPE, rate of perceived exertion, and reps in reserve. And the research does support that, you can leave, especially guys like me and up, you can leave a rep or two in the tank on every set that you do, and you're still going to see the same benefits as you would going to failure on certain things. Now, the argument here is what's going to have better outcomes, the high volume, high intensity versus, high volume with a little bit lower intensity compared to like, you know lower reps, heavy weight, balls to the wall, right? There's so much context in that's necessary when it comes to those two things. And so the first couple things you have to look at is like, what's the training age of the person? Are they a beginner? Are they novice? Are they advanced? Right. And then once you have an understanding or a little bit of context on that person, let's just say, let's just use me as an example, right? You know, what's my thoughts on high volume, lower intensity versus high intensity, lower volume. And I think that, and this is like always the popular thing for me to say is number one, it depends, right? But I think that the true reality, and we can go down this rabbit hole and look at the data on both, right? But the true reality is that if you're using the appropriate periodization and the appropriate methods, you should have some of everything in your program. And so where does that go for you or I or my clients or your clients or whatever, is that kind of wraps up the conjugate sequencing system, right? We're going to start off with that heavy compound movement, and it's going to be again somewhere from 85% to 99 or 100% of a 1 rep max for a 5, a 3, or a double or a single, right, depending on who you are and what you're trying to do. And then as you go, you move more into like that mechanical tension range with the main supplemental exercise that supports the first exercise that you did, right? So that's 3 to 4 sets of, 6 to 8 to 10 reps.
Yeah.
And then from there, the volume goes up. Now, you know as well as I do that the day also matters, right? Because
Yeah.
the sub max or max effort day, the heavier day, let's just call it a heavy day for people that don't understand those concepts, that's going to be lower volume. Why? Because the intensity is higher, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
keeping the central nervous system in mind. And then the lighter, faster dynamic day is somewhat still moderate to high intensity, but the weights aren't heavy. So you're still trying hard, but the reps are going to be higher. We're going to limit the rest intervals, stuff like that, to allow for this balance between those two worlds, right? And that allows for better recovery. And I think when you really look at things, there's going to be bad on both sides of those, right? The higher volume stuff with the lighter weights and the lower intensity for compound movements is probably really degradative to your joints. It's not great for your joints, right? Versus the heavier stuff done again in appropriate rep range. We're not talking about going to an all out max because that can be bad for your joints too, but we're talking about training heavy, 4 to 6 reps. That done enough over time can fatigue the central nervous system. Whereas the higher volume stuff doesn't impact your central nervous system in the same way, right? So there's going to be both sides where there's negatives and positives. And I think for people to say like, well, it's one or the other, to me, it's silly. And that's why I get into this, discussion about, well, maybe it's the programming and the periodization that you're using and not necessarily, you know, high volume versus, you know, high intensity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. I do think that, I mean, that was a lot, but I will say that the main takeaways are it's training smart, it's training with a plan, right? I mean, that goes without saying with training smart, but it's going in with a plan, knowing what you're trying to accomplish, and then knowing how to plan that out. Like you can't go 52 weeks a year high intensity. You can't go high volume, high intensity. You can't go low volume, high intensity, low volume, low intensity for any of those times 52 weeks a year. It is not going to reach the ultimate goal. So it's starting with defining the goal of what you're trying to do, knowing you had mentioned your training experience, how experienced this lifter is, factoring in if they're natural or enhanced for sure, factoring in the things that we talked about in the last podcast: strength, nutrition slash hydration, conditioning, mobility, flexibility, rest, recovery. You know that if you only got 4 hours of sleep last night, or your client did, and they're that stressed out mom you had mentioned that's taking a lot of caffeine, and then now you're saying, hey, by the way, we're going to do heavy split squats to start the workout, when you know that that person hadn't, and that's where, doesn't have the adequate ability to hit that as much as they would. So that's why you can auto regulate, you can change things, rep ranges, drop the weight, what have you. Yeah.
And there's two situations where specific situations, like let's say we've all been here, right? And people can try and refute central nervous fatigue all they want, but it's real. And I've been there, and I know a lot of people that have been there. But let's say you wake up one morning, you're groggy, you can't wake up, everything you eat makes you even more sleepy, you can't focus, but you're not sore, your joints don't hurt, you're not all beat up, and that's a good place for you to say, you know what, like maybe your resting heart rate's higher than normal, even though you slept good. Like, so that's a good time for you to say, maybe I need to not do the heavy stuff today. Maybe I need to reel it back a little bit because there is some neurological fatigue happening here. And I need to do like, you know, a low volume, or excuse me, a little bit higher volume, but much lower intensity, like bodybuilding style workout, get a pump, get that done, and then, get some mobility work done and then get out of the gym. And then on the other side of the coin, there are days where you just wake up and your elbows are just torn up, your knees are torn up, and you're like, there is no way that I'm loading either of these joints in any type of way that's gonna, you
Yeah.
know, be appropriate with high volume.
So
So
before you
go ahead.
go, what you're saying right now, Justin, is if you actually remember our commandment show, which was episode 6, max effort versus dynamic effort, commandment number 2, today's workout is only as good as yesterday's recovery, right? And then commandment number 4, be honest with yourself. So I did want to mention those two commandments. You're saying exactly those things. You're being honest with yourself. Do I have to change this? How do I feel today versus yesterday? How did I recover yesterday? Am I prepared to today? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I mean, we had already said this, right? We're basically saying like you can accomplish both of these things within a training program, but you have to keep those commandments in mind, specifically commandments number 2 and 4.
Correct. And so the problem here lies in, let's say, what a lot of people will do, just using basic like linear periodization with progressive overload, is that because of the percentages that I'm using, or because of what I've written out or my coach has written out for me, I must still go into the gym today and do 4 sets of 8 at an RPE of 3 or an RPE of 7 and get the work done. And it's like day to day, 70% is going to be different today than it is tomorrow.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's, if you're not using the appropriate parameters to dictate your training, which auto regulation is extremely appropriate, right? Then you're going to run into these days a lot of times where you're just not prepared to train at that level of intensity or that level of volume. And so that brings us always, it brings us back to the 72-hour rule, which is always in play in our programming, and the conditioning days, the recovery days that are in between, which is always in play in our programming, with the exception of people that do a 4-day split, and those dynamic days will be back to back, but that's okay because they're later at the end of the week and they're much lower intensity. So it's not heavy training. So again, it's not it's not rocket science to think like maybe one isn't better than the other, but Dave, if I was to give you, German volume training, which is 10 sets of 10 on 3 out of the 6 or 5 or 6 exercises that we do, right? For more than 3 weeks, you're probably gonna be smoked in terms of, like, your joints and your overall soreness and stuff versus, you know, we can throw that stuff in for a week or 2 to allow your nervous system to recover from the barrage of heavy, heavy-ish training that we do, or because again, everybody is so different. It's really gonna be like, you can say, every 4 weeks, every fourth week, we're gonna unload or deload or reload or whatever you want to call it. But some people can push 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Some people can't. And I know what it feels like to go into a period of non-functional overreaching, which essentially is just what would be termed as overtraining. Now, people don't really understand what overtraining means, and most people think it's impossible. Like Arnold used to say, there's no such thing. It's only under eating and under recovering. But, back in the 70s, they also didn't have 10 million different stressors that they had to, be bombarded with, every single day. So, you know, drugs obviously play a factor there too, but I don't mean to take anything away from him. I'm just saying, like, if you were to max out on bench and squat and deadlift every single day, how many weeks do you think you're going to make it before you find out that overtraining is actually real? Right. And so,
Did you want my
yeah, let's hear your answer.
I think we're probably close to a month, right? I mean, if we're doing maybe 2, 3 weeks, right? Every day out of
Every day.
7 days. Okay. Oh, I mean, if I make it a week and a half, I must be the Hulk, dude. Like, I mean,
A
like
week,
that's like you
right?
probably 6 days then. Like
Right.
maybe that 6th day, dude. You're probably pounding sand, saying, "I got to do this again."
And what's the side effect of that?
Oh, you're getting injured. Your nervous system's crashed. I think that you could have some mental health issues. I think that you could overeat. I think your cortisol is going to be through the roof. I think your rest is going to be really down. I think you'll be irritable. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of different
I
hormonal
mean,
issues. Yeah.
depression and anxiety are like the
Yeah.
big ones there. Your testosterone, your hormones are going to tank, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can't tell me that overtraining just isn't real. Even in the grand scheme of periodization, where I have gone through and made sure that I make changes when I need to make changes, when I feel like changes need to be made in my programming. I might write it down, but I'm writing it down in pencil so that I can go back and erase things, right? When done the right way, your deload week just becomes another week that allows you to still get after it, but you're making some cuts and changes in either volume or intensity in different places to allow for some recovery to take place. But going into non-functional overreaching is a it's tough, and it can take months to come back from it. And I've been dealing with that all this year because I went a little bit overboard on some things, and it's hard for me to slow down. So the process of coming back from that has been slow, but I've really figured out and dialed in now where I went wrong. And that's where for the, for the aging athlete, for the 35 and up category people, you really have to pay attention to these things. And so that's where, getting back to our topic, I don't think anybody can stand on that hill. Like, you know, it's the it's really like Mike Menser and Dorian Yates versus like all of the all of the guys that are doing like what we were just talking about, this like Jeff Nippard uh, doing like the
Yeah.
science-based
Science
approach
based. Yeah.
where they're leaving 4 or 5 reps in reserve. And I think the argument really becomes old school versus new school. And Joe DeFranco talked about this, and he made a good point. Like, who are you supposed to listen to? Because you have Dorian Yates, who's a multiple time Mr. Olympia, okay, which we're well aware of, there being some anabolics in play there, but you don't get to that level without elite genetics too, right? So again, his physique at that level was not like the poster child for what the average person actually wants to look like. But you have him saying, blood and guts, get after it as hard as you can, 2 to 3 sets on every exercise to failure with, 70, 60 to 70% of your max, right? And you just progress that way. But then on the other side, you have a guy like and I am not a bodybuilding fanatic, by the way. I'm just going off of what other people have discussed.
You're gonna
Yeah,
say Jay Cutler.
Jay Cutler, right?
Yeah.
So you have a guy like Jay Cutler who
Yeah. Training
um
smart, dude. He trains
training
smart. That's
smart,
why he doesn't get super
lower
injured.
volume, normal intensity. And then you have Ronnie Coleman,
Yeah.
and
High volume
who
or low volume but super high intensity.
super heavy intensity, super heavy weight, right? And so, people like to say, well, Ronnie Coleman's in a wheelchair now, so we can't use him. And it's like, hold on a second. Like, he had he's in a wheelchair because of complications from surgeries that he had.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
most of these guys have all had surgeries. They've all blown something off because the copious amounts of anabolics they were using that just pushed their tendons to the limit that they can't, hold up to. And so when you're looking at these different, number one, I don't think any of the general population should be looking at these guys as the star-studded example of how we need to train, right? Like, to me, it just shouldn't be that way. Nor should we be using, the other extreme, which is the science-based guys, because we do know that science doesn't account for everybody. Like, it just doesn't. If that was the case, then I wouldn't be able to continue to get stronger because everybody's supposed to get weaker after they turn 40, and that's just not the
Well, you could
case.
say, well, I mean, could you call Louis and the West Side guys and even my guy JP out there? Like, I would call him like a science-based lifter because he's using the Louis science, right? Like, I mean, that's science in my way. Like, of like,
It is,
this is
yes.
proven science. I'm taking these lifters. You're doing it. JP's doing it out there in West Texas, and it's like, hey, like, this is science because it's a proven method that has had several hundred subjects over a period of time, thousands of subjects. But also, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel because of some nerd on the internet. Like, hey, like, I would call my friend a nerd, but a very intelligent nerd, right? Like, hey, like, I know what to do because I'm doing it and I'm programming it in a way that makes sense, just like you are, right? So this whole like science-based thing, like, I do think that there are science-based lifters that are like not super strong, but there are a ton that are strong. I think Jeff Nippard is strong. I think he is smart, but it's the, like, I just pulled up a T Nation article. This is from last September, 2 Septembers ago in 2023, defining volume and intensity. But then they're talking about, hey, like, high intensity program. They bring it up in the first sentence, first 3-4 paragraphs here. Wendler 5-3-1, right? I mean, that just makes sense. I mean, you could do a 5-3-1 program and get super strong and keep on pushing it, but then you're going to, in that week 4 deload, like you had mentioned, do super high volume before you go back to the low volume stuff. We're changing the percentages. So in that sense, it
So
is science. Yeah.
science is a very vast
Right.
concept,
Yeah, you
right?
could just say
So
science. Yeah.
I think, yeah, so I think like these guys, when they're science based, it's more like research based,
Oh, okay.
right?
You mean just
They're
the
using the
research.
research as
Yeah.
their science based versus Louis. He's using research that's based on athletes and texts of things that like actually happen in the real world with physics, right? So physics as a science is pretty irrefutable for the most part, unless like there's, multiple dimensions and all that stuff. But anyways, so like it's pretty irrefutable, right? Versus like if you drop something, it's going to fall to the ground at 9.8 meters per second. That's just like how it works, depending on the weight and whatever. Versus we're talking about that physics, biomechanics, speed, power, strength versus these guys are looking at research and saying things like, well, the best way to create hypertrophy is in the stretch position. Fine. But then what these guys are doing is they're doing bicep curls and they're putting this cuff on their arm and they're just going like this, right?
Yeah, I
Because
remember this.
they're
Yeah.
just
I've seen this.
straining this. And so to me, that's where the silliness comes in. And so I will give you a really great example based on research. So they took a cohort of athletes and they took one group of athletes, and the group of athletes did quarter squats and they measured performance with quarter squats. And then they measured performance with guys that were doing full squats. Okay. And they measured their performance before and after. And you can back check me on this if needed, but I believe the results of the study were that the after 12 weeks or 18 weeks or whatever, the quarter squat group performed better on a vertical jump and a broad jump or whatever athletic test compared to the full squat group. Now, why would that be the case? Now, here it's easy for someone just to look at, you know, a peer reviewed journal and say, well, because the quarter squat is better than the full squat. Or
Yeah.
did we not? Because it doesn't take into consideration that a full squat accumulates a lot more fatigue than a quarter
Yeah.
squat.
Yeah.
So at the end of 12 weeks, there was no recovery period, there was no anything. They just compared the two groups and their testing numbers. They didn't have a unload or a peaking phase or anything like that. So likely what happened is the quarter squat group was much less fatigued and nowhere near going into the non-functional overreaching phase versus the full squat group was probably into the functional overreaching phase. And so they weren't going to perform because that super compensation hadn't occurred yet. Now, if they came back and tested them 6 weeks later after a full off period, the full squat group may have performed better. We don't know that because they didn't do it in the study. But based on that, people are building training programs that are only quarter squats based on that research. And can you see how like that's kind of dumb to do that?
Yeah, I looked it up. Is this 2012 study? I think I found it. It was unclear if it increases in one repetition maximum or 1 RM in quarter squats result in higher gains compared with full depth squats with and isometric force production and vertical jump performance. Aim of the research products was to compare the effects of different squat variants on the development of 1 RM and their transfer effects to the counter movement jump CMJ and squat jump SJ height, maximal voluntary contraction MVC, and maximal rate of force development MRFD. So 23 women, 36 men, parallelized into 3 groups based on their counter movement jump height, deep front squats, deep back squats, and quarterback squats. In addition, control group existed. I'm not going to like go through the people that their ages and stuff. They're all around like 24. Experimental groups trained D week for 10 weeks with a strength power block periodization, which produced significant gains of the specific squat 1RM. The FSQ and BSQ attained significant elevations in SJ and CMJ without any interaction effects between both groups. A BSQ quarter and C did not reveal any significant changes of SJ and CMJ. Both groups significantly higher SJ scores over C over the control group. The quarter squat group did not feature any significant group interest or difference to BSQ quarter in the SJ, whereas FSQ showed a trend toward higher SJ heights over BSQ quarter. So it says toward the bottom here, training of BSQ quarter resulted in significantly lower MRFD and VC values in contrast to FSQ and BSQ. Quarter squat training elicited significant transfer losses into the isometric maximal and explosive strength behavior. These findings therefore contest the concept of superior angle specific transfer effects. Deep front and back squats guarantee performance enhancing transfer effects of dynamic maximal strength to dynamic speed strength capacity of hip and knee extensors compared with quarter squats. So
I may have
yes, it
been
is. Yes, it
referencing
is.
a different study, but
Okay. Well, no, you're right. You're. It's saying exactly what you're saying. Does this mean, based on this research, you should only be programming quarter squat? What is the goal? Right. We talked about this with the basketball athletes. When they do quarter squats, the goal is, hey, like this is good for them specifically. They're getting into a quarter squat before they rebound. Explosive movements for speed strength athletes versus, hey, I'm a mom of two. I'm 33 years old. I'm X amount of height. I'm X amount of weight. And this is my goal.
I just don't understand why it has to always be so one-sided. Like, I just
You
don't, it
know
doesn't
why?
make any
Because this is the
sense
internet
for me.
age that we live in. Justin, this is how long have you been on this earth? Ever since the internet came out, it's you have to make a decision. What side are you on? And it
We
always should be in this community. It depends.
Yeah,
It
and
can
we
be
talked
both.
about that last week, like, if you're gonna do, parallel or just above parallel box squats, the next thing that we're gonna do is something that gets you to a full range of motion. It's like you should be looking at everything with the exception of, like, what's that guy that loves 90-degree eccentric isometrics? Seedman. With the exception of Dr. Seedman, we'll pass on him because he's wild. But there's something there's something to be said for everybody to do. No, don't do squats on Bosu balls. That's dumb. I don't care what David Weck says. But there's a use for that thing.
Like whack, dude.
No, come on, dude. Like, there's a use for that for the Bosu ball. It's just not that, right? So it's like I just don't understand why people see everything as so black and white when it's really gray.
Don't you think
Honestly.
it's they see it online and they don't have a training program that they follow, so they just say like, well, what's the harm in trying it? And then you fall in love with a certain program. Like I've told you this before, I fell in love with the Chris Gethin 12-week trainer, and I loved it so much that I like did it twice, or maybe it was 3 times. I think it was twice. And then I fell in love with some of Jim Stepani's plans, and you fall in love with certain things, right? Like Jeff Long, I was liking his stuff for a little bit online, like a couple years ago. John Jewett, same thing. Like, oh, you know what? Like, why don't I just try this out? This is before you and I started working together. And now looking back, the first time I ever looked at Westside Barbell stuff was when I was in college. And it was like, why did I not know about this? No one in my circle had ever showed it to me. And even then, I was the only person that talked about that, like around in my circle. Like no one else knew about it until you came around.
Yeah.
And now we have all these people that I actually am interested in and read. It's like, okay,
And
yeah,
it's
I do like
it's
this shit.
people know, like, that especially in the sports world, like, we could talk about Gen Pop too, but just specifically in the sports world, like, we know that there's more bang for your buck in certain exercises compared to doing Olympic lifts. But because there's this dogma of, like, you just have to do it because, the team from Nebraska in the 90s did it and they were just the best. And then that carried over, for the CSCS and, NSCA
Yeah.
for however
Right.
long, and it's just
Yeah.
grandfathered to the next person is you have to do power cleans, you have to do hang cleans, but
Right. Right. Yeah.
we know for a fact the science of it's not, likely people get stronger or better at doing power cleans and hang cleans for two reasons. Technique is number one. Number two is because they could squat more, right? It's not because that lift made them, stronger per se, right? Because again, the clean, it's it's too light to create enough tension to get stronger, and it's too fast, right? And
All
you the
right. I'll max out
you
on cleans
fast.
tomorrow.
Now,
Not with,
I
not with
I
this
would
neck.
say, like, West Side Barbell talks about utilizing hang cleans or power cleans every now and again for somebody that with not great form, for somebody that wants to pack on muscle in, like, their upper back because it puts them in that position that is almost compromised. So you end up gaining strength through your core when you do it like that every now and again, but again, there's that dogma with everything, and it's like I think clean pulls are cool and snatch high pulls. I'm not getting into the rack position or overhead because I just don't think that that's good for my
Right.
shoulders.
No, it's not optimal, right? They say that word a lot too.
No,
We're gonna start saying
but it's
that.
like
It's optimal.
why are you using it? Are you using it in the for the dynamic effort method? Okay. Well, then is the bar moving at 1.0 meters per second? And if it's not, then you're not in the right space. So
Yeah.
again, like there's so many other ways to develop explosive power than to do power cleans that are much less degradative on the body. Now, there are people that will argue that, and again, because they've been dogmaed into the results that they've seen, but you can't tell me that we know for a fact that once you're proficient form-wise with an Olympic movement, if you don't squat, back squat, front squat, or do overhead press, your clean and jerk will not go up, right? It's just not gonna, unless you get heavier. It's just not gonna happen. So what that's telling me is it's the other things that are making that person more capable, and you're really just using that exercise as like a proxy to try and develop more, you know, quick strength or slash power, right? But again, if that's the case, we can use jumps that are much safer to be able to achieve that. I don't know how you can debate that, but again, like that doesn't mean that I don't think you shouldn't use the movements. I will never say that you shouldn't use the movements. We've done high pulls, we've done snatch high pulls, clean pulls. They're fun.
Yeah. You have to have fun in your training.
I think that's the main reason why is they're fun, right?
Right.
It's a super animalistic movement, that they're gonna say, well, triple extension and blah blah blah. It's like, dude, you can get triple extension just by jumping off the ground. Like it's not to me, it's entertaining to them, right?
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
and I think that that's where the high volume training versus low volume training applies. It has to be fun in order for you to do it. If you hate low volume training, you're not going to have fun doing it. And I think your results won't be as good because I don't think your drive and intent is going to be as high as it needs to be. So it goes back to picking something that you can follow, have fun with, and execute at a high level with intent, but also like just getting it in the way that you should do it. The form needs to be as good as it can be. The auto regulation needs to be there, and not being clouded by if you were raised a Patriots fan, everything they do is right. Right? I wasn't raised that way. If they do something stupid, I'm gonna call it out. Right? And I would have definitely been vocal the past few years. So let's go back to what you said about the dogma of it all. If you are someone who grew up that really believes in the lifting space, oh, high volume training is the way to go, and then you try low volume, don't have your judgment cloud your results and your execution of the program. Be open to changes and building that real good program for yourself, or reaching out to a coach, of course, shameless plug, that will put a mix in there of both. Because I noticed that a strength coach that we like, right, DeFranco said this, the best training program you're doing, or the best program out there, is the one you're not following. I do think that like he's kind of like saying like, hey, always mix it up. But I think what he really means by that is you shouldn't always follow the same one. And it's never bad to try something different. Just like he says, like the 12 to 24 weeks of no barbell. We do that, right? We, at a very bare minimum, 12 weeks, no barbell. Same thing. At a very bare minimum, if you were a low volume trainer, try to do a month or two of something different. See how you like it, right?
I completely agree.
Yeah, for
I
sure. If
completely
you're not
agree.
doing, if you're not jumping, if you're not doing athletic movements, try that. We've talked about that on a podcast. If you're not doing power cleans, yeah, try it out for 3 weeks for sure. But you got to make sure that the form is good. You start light. The intent is there, right? It's the same thing.
The body's gonna adapt to new stimuluses. If you're like one of these bros that wants to make some gains, try something different. If I can get stronger, I can lift more weight, I can do more reps. There's just so many direct carryovers there. So it's like, don't be so into like, I just love getting pumped up and looking all jacked and stuff. And it's like, yeah, but that goes away in a couple hours, you know?
Right.
Like, pick
There's
things that are
very
going to be
few
lasting.
things that you can do the same every single day. You should be drinking about the same amount of water every day. You should be eating around the same foods that your body needs. You can have variety there. You should be sleeping around the same amount of hours every night, right? But everything else is open for debate, right? You don't read the same book. I mean, of course, you could read the same book over and over again, but if you are into fiction or nonfiction, imagine reading the same 200-page book every single day until you finish it, and then you just start again, right? I mean, you don't want to do that every single day for the rest of your life. Even people who do read the same book over and over again, they go to different chapters.
Yeah.
Try something else. Try a different chapter. Don't hit a different route on your walk today. I never go the same route. Actually, lately I've been doing the same one. So you know what? That makes me think we're doing a different one today.
Or just go faster.
Or go faster. Yeah, exactly. With the neck, we're not doing the what was that called? The vest. Yeah, I hadn't been doing the weighted vest. We gotta throw that back in the mix once the neck goes away.
Yeah. That can be problematic.
Yeah. Any last thoughts?
I mean, I'm with you. I think that when you're viewing, you know, a method that you're using, right? Don't view the method itself as, high volume versus high intensity, or low volume, high intensity, or whatever. View it as a means to get you to where you need to be within a system. And I think, again, that's why we rely so heavily on the conjugate system, because it's not a system of numbers, it's a system of methods, right? And it's different methods within the system. Some of those methods, like the repetition method, that's more high volume, right? Max effort is more low volume, right?
Yep.
Dynamic
Yep.
is more high volume, high intensity. And so there's different ways to view it. And that's why I think, like, most people that just train, if they're switching things up enough, they're probably doing conjugate and they didn't even know it.
Sure.
But you
And we've said that
can't,
before, for sure.
yeah, you can't just continue to just beat a dead horse over and over and over again, because you're not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that's a great way to end it. And I'm going to try to post this tonight. So, Justin, we got the Patriots Jets. I believe the line is, let me see here. This is great podcast. Still waiting for it to load.
I would go Pats by 14 and
It's
a half.
12 and a half. No, I'm
Okay,
saying
so
we're going to go on the line here. 12 and a half Patriots.
So I was very close to that line, just on my own basic knowledge.
It just cut out. I didn't hear you.
I said I was very close to that line just on basic knowledge, because I said 14 and a half.
Well, I guess you're on the Pats minus 12 and a half. You know what? I'm going to say that I agree. I'm going to take the Patriots minus 12 and a half as well. Drake May anytime touchdown for anyone who likes to wager out there. I think he runs in a touchdown.
I give it 14 and a half simply because the Jets gave up like 2 cornerstone defensive players in a trade. To me, that's wild, but I don't know.
I really want to Brees Hall on the Pats, but we'll see what happens in the offseason. Maybe they lose him and they get a compensatory pick.
We'll see.
We'll have him in New England anytime he wants.
He's a good running back.
He is. He's very good. Yeah, Brock Purdy's college teammate there.
Yep.
All right. Well, this has been an episode of the Conjugate Dads podcast for Justin Commodoris and Common Athlete Performance Coaching, which this podcast has been sponsored by. I'm Dave Chase. We'll see you next time.
Peace.